Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm here to bring you week 13 of my 2019 reads. This week was a great reading week. I managed to finish 4 books, 3 of which were feminist reads, and 1 of which was written by an indie author friend of mine. The first book I finished was Icarus by Adam Wayne. Adam is my friend, and he has written an amazing retelling of the myth of Icarus. If you're not familiar with it, this is the Greek mythology of Icarus, whose dad was Daedalus. Daedalus was a great inventor who built the labyrinth and also built a set of wings for Icarus, who flew a little too close to the sun. So going into this retelling, I knew something of the myth of Icarus, but what I really enjoyed about it was that Adam built up this internal understanding of the motivations of Icarus, the world he lived in, the sorts of relationships he had with those around him. The story focuses especially on Icarus's relationship with his father, Daedalus. And Daedalus is very smart, but emotionally maybe kind of traumatized by the world that he lives in. This is a very brutal world where life is held very cheap, where the king Minos is in charge of everything and he's a brutal leader. So it creates this world of not very much safety, not very much value for other human beings. And it reminds me a lot, in fact, of Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi, which I read last month, that when parents grow up in this world where they know how brutal the system can be, they tend to enact brutality upon their children in order to protect them. The idea is, I will beat you into obedience rather than let you disobey and later be harmed by police officers or the system. And so in this way, Minos is very brutal and difficult and causes Daedalus so much fear that Daedalus then does the same to Icarus. And so a lot of this book is about that relationship. Icarus is kept isolated. He is kind of often physically and mentally abused by his father, and it's sort of his story of developing into his own person, realizing his own strength, with some tragic elements as well. So I really liked these explorations and sort of Icarus becoming his own person, discovering his own strength, and learning that life can be more than just fear and hiding. However, the brutality of the world really was a little difficult for me. I'm always a bit sensitive to violence and abuse. There was quite a bit of that in this book, and it was also extremely male-centric. So especially given that March was Women's History Month and I'm reading all these feminist works, I definitely noticed that all of the main characters were male and that women were very much just seen as objects in this world and often abused. So that was a little bit hard for me. I did really enjoy, though, I talked to Adam about these themes and these topics, and we had a whole discussion that was absolutely beautiful about what this world was like and how he felt constrained by telling the story from the perspective of Icarus and Daedalus, and therefore, how does an author balance those issues of acknowledging what those individuals would have felt about other people at that time, while also as a modern person not really thinking that that's the way to do things. So it was just a really interesting discussion. I got a lot out of that. If you are a fan of mythology, definitely check it out. I will have a link to it on Goodreads below. Overall, I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I finished Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. This is not a collection that was on my TBR for March, but it was something that I had put on my TBR for February, for Black History Month, and I'm really glad that I got to it. I had originally read an essay of Roxane Gay's in a collection called Double Bind, Women on Ambition by Romm, and I thought that Roxane Gay's essay was one of the best essays in that book. I had been really interested to read more by her, and it was so perfect to pick up Bad Feminist. This is an essay collection where Roxane Gay talks about many different feminist themes. So in it, she talks about her own experiences. She talks about kind of analyzing things in the media, analyzing events that have happened through a feminist lens, and I really liked her basic premise. So the idea of bad feminist is that all of us are pretty flawed. All of us have issues. All of us are uneducated, ignorant, difficult, problematic in some ways, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be trying to be better and that we shouldn't be advocating for what is right. And so this whole essay collection really does a nice job of balancing, acknowledging our humanity and our own frailty and faults with talking about how we should be better, how we should be recognizing where we're failing and trying to improve things. I absolutely love her writing. Something about the way that Roxane Gay writes really connects deeply with me. I just feel it in my heart. I love her writing. I especially loved the essays where she talks about herself. Those ones somehow really connected with me, even though I think that as a person, she and I are very, very different. She's much more of a risk taker, much more of kind of just a little bit wild in certain ways, and very, very ambitious and very willing to take on a lot of different things. So sometimes she scares me with just how much she put herself out there, and she's so vulnerable in these essays, but it's just beautiful to read. So I loved this essay collection. I did struggle a little bit in the middle essays, which were more of like novel and movie and other media analyses. Those ones didn't connect with me as much, and overall, sometimes it didn't feel like necessarily each essay in the collection was completely cohesive, but I very much enjoyed it. I will pick up more by Roxane Gay, and I gave this collection 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next, I finished a book that was actually on my March Women's History Month TBR, so that made me very pleased. It was Women in Tech by Tarah von Vlack. So this book is a book that I actually have a physical copy of and got a couple years ago and just never got around to reading. It's a collection of essays. Part of it is Tarah von Vlack giving career advice. So it covers everything from resumes to interviewing to networking to starting your own company. So she really covers the whole range of what you need to know in order to be a woman in tech and succeed. The other half is interspersed throughout essays by various women in tech who talk about their life stories and their journeys, and it's meant to be sort of an inspirational thing. Overall, unfortunately, this book didn't really work for me. It definitely did what it said it was going to do, but it did it in a slightly different way than I was expecting. So, Von Vlack is very kind of outside of the box thinker. She does her own thing. She leads a very directed individual life. She's a little bit of a rebel. She's a little bit of a rock star, just kind of does her own thing. And that shines through in her advice as well. A lot of that is non-standard things. A lot of that is like, hey, you should be a contractor rather than working a regular 9-to-5, or why even do that? You should just start your own company. So a lot of this is very entrepreneurial spirit, and that's beautiful and wonderful, but not so much for me, not so much what I'm looking for. And the women who were telling their life stories, it was the same deal. They were a lot of amazing women who were just these kind of go out and get them and lead an amazing life that is very non-standard and just not something that really connected to me somehow. So I didn't really find myself being inspired or being interested in kind of following the same path or trying out some of the things mentioned in the books. A lot of the advice was good. It's just not good for me, if that makes sense. So for me, it was just a little bit of a disappointment. I think I had high expectations going in, but the expectations just weren't quite aligned with what the book actually was. So for me, I gave this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. The last book I finished was also something from my March TBR. It's Half the Sky by Kristof and Sheryl Wooten. And this book was amazing, absolutely amazing. It came out quite a few years ago. Hopefully some other people have heard of it. It is just such an impactful read. It's very difficult to read because the content is so heavy. In this book, the authors tell about a lot of the extreme challenges that women face worldwide, especially in third world countries. So everything from sex trafficking to rape and abuse to honor killings to maternal mortality to just kind of the oppression of women. And it builds such a convincing case, looking at numbers, looking at politics, looking at individual experiences of women. So they make a lot of strong claims about what is going on for women and what the impact of that is. They take a look at data from the UN, at what governments are doing, what the cost in terms of impact on the economy, as well as impact on kind of life expectancy, things like that. It's really, really compelling. They also intersperse a lot of this data with individual stories. So they tell the stories of various women they have met who have gone through these troubles, many of whom really suffered, and many of whom came out very strong from it, who recovered from much of the oppression or the difficulties they had faced and became advocates for other women. So a lot of very inspiring stories. They also talk about many different aid groups, many different grassroots organizations, many different people who are trying to make the world a better place. So overall, it was an amazing read, just so powerful, learning about so many big issues that are going on. I mean, you don't think that slavery is a thing in the modern day world, but in terms of sex trafficking and kind of forced prostitution, it actually is a really big deal. There's a lot of slavery that goes on in the world, and it's just kind of shocking the degree to which women suffer. But this book provides a lot of hope. It provides a lot of information on how we can make a difference. It especially focuses on the impact of health and education. Basically, the idea that the best way to make women powerful and make them have a say in their communities is to make sure that they have education, that they are healthy, and that they are empowered through investment. So there's a big focus on making sure that girls go to school, making sure that they have the health things they need, such as just making sure that they have iodized salt. That's a huge thing. Or that they are dewormed. And also doing various grassroots-led aid organizations, making sure that those receive our support and our help. So this book was really impactful. I highly recommend that everybody read it. I think it really is eye-opening and very worthwhile to read, even if not the easiest or lightest read. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm so happy that I read it. That wraps up my week 13 reads. I hope you guys have had a great reading week as well. If you've read any of these books, please definitely leave me a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Or just if you want to share what you've been reading or any suggestions you have, I'd love to hear it.